Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Fitafi. For a change, viewers, we are not going to talk about Pakistan's internal politics. We are going to talk about Afghanistan because somehow it seems that Afghan peace process is back on the table. And it seems that there is a serious chance of some breakthrough in the coming days as well. That comes at a time when Washington Post has also released a long list of documents that actually show that how the various office bearers, even Western media, kept on misrepresenting the facts on ground in Afghanistan and how they projected an unwinnable war as something that might be quite fine, that things are hunky-dory. So we are going to talk about both these aspects. It is important because remember, these inflection points, particularly Afghanistan and Iraq, have actually changed the world, the way we live in it. A lot has changed since Afghan war took place and Iraq invasion also took place. So we have to actually ask ourselves, why was it that so many people kept on lying or representing mistruths to their people? And this is one very important fact because somehow, somewhere, it is thought that there is a deep state in the US as well, and that's why Donald Trump is ruling the country. And he came to power in reaction to that. So we have Afghanistan presents an excellent case to study whether there is a deep state or whether it is all conjecture. In order to help us understand all these matters and more, we are joined by Brigadier Retired Saad Nazir Saab, who is a defense analyst with a special emphasis on Afghanistan. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Dr. Amna Mahmood Saiba, who is an expert on international relations, a pedagogue, teaches on the subject as well. Ma'am, thank you very much for being part of the program. Next to her is Ambassador Asif Durrani, who is a career diplomat, also an expert on foreign affairs. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Brigadier Saab, I have to start with you and I have to ask you, is it going to be an infinite time lucky that so many times we build up hope? This time is different when peace process is back on track?
Oh, thank you indeed. Of course, it has been started after a very uneasy delay and uneasy breakdown, which was imposed by President Trump himself, and he said the talks are dead. But the dead has come, resurrection of the dead has taken place.
Second coming.
Yeah, second coming. And this resurrection is, I suppose, will give some sort of wings to President Trump as well in the coming elections. So on one side are the wings, which are supposed to be in the air to take him to the second term. And second thing is that this paper which has come out, that enough with Afghanistan, I suppose, that is. And enough with the war, that is the second aspect. And third is, I suppose, that truth prevails ultimately, how much lie you may
and it also represents, as I was saying about, deep state, because there are many Trump voters now believe that, they actively believe that there is a deep state. The problem is when last time President Donald Trump announced that he is actually scuttling the talks, at that time he had plans to take Taliban to Camp David. And we know that John Bolton, who was the National Security Advisor, was opposed to it. At that time, he actually kept on opposing. Then he was sacked, and eventually impeachment is taking place. And all of the Bolton supporters are witnesses. Do you think this time it is going to be different?
Yes, of course it will be different, because now the realization is there on all the camps. That may be the deep state, that may be the Pentagon, or that may be those who are calling it a bad deal. Even they are now convinced that probably putting up more lives there and spending on a foreign state, and then nothing coming out on the ground on which they can build whatsoever the edifice of.
So you are optimistic.
Yes, I am quite optimistic.
Right. Dr. Amna, are you optimistic as well?
I would support what Brigadier Saab said, that there is a realization in US, and that was already prevailing, that's why Mr. Trump won the election, because previously people were expecting that Mr. Obama would change the scenario, he will pull out the armies, and the budget and money would be spending on the American society, giving employment and social securities. And that was, that was not fulfilled. And as a reaction, Mr. Trump entered in White House, and despite all odds we attach with him, and he himself claimed, I think that Mr. Trump is sincerely trying to pull out the armies, and as he did in case of Syria, despite all
but you
opposition
saw the
from
resistance, right?
all opposition from the deep state, as you are mentioning, and elsewhere, and from their allies as well. Mr. Trump took that decision, and his 13-hour visit to Afghanistan that reveals that how serious he is in pulling out the armies from there and ending up his commitment. Because as we were discussing before, Americans claimed in case of Vietnam that they are going to pull out with respect. And America is doing the same in Afghanistan. That's why they are conducting this dialogue process. Otherwise, they can pull out at any time. 14,500 forces are no burden for them to pull out.
Right.
But
withdrawal is always easier. But when you are actually, it is attached to certain values, then it becomes a problem. Ambassador Saab, are you optimistic?
I'm cautiously optimistic.
And can you qualify that?
Can
you qualify the cautious part?
Yes, there are still spoilers.
Okay.
So that can derail the process.
Can you name them? India?
Yes, of course, India is number one. And then Afghanistan itself is a narco state.
Okay.
So those drug lords and warlords who are in fact getting benefits from the drug trade, and including some in the present dispensation. In fact, who is who of Afghanistan is benefiting from drug trade. So I don't think they'll sue for peace. If peace returns to Afghanistan, it means then no more narcotics as well, because that would be the part of the deal. And if you look at those papers which have now been released, so they also talk about narco business. And then Americans, they look the other way. And it is almost $50 billion trade in the European market, and almost $5 billion returned to Afghanistan, and which then is enjoyed by all those who are in the
warlords and all,
And more so with regard to spoilers, let me come again. It is India number one, because they think if peace returns, then their bases and their proxies inside Afghanistan, they will become redundant. So.
And secondly, it might offer a corridor to Central Asia.
Because the United States and Iran's relationship are tense. And unless Iran is taken into confidence, and for that, US will have to make certain moves. So it is possible then Iran may not cooperate.
Since you actually are the only one who presented a skeptical picture as well, let me ask you, if there is a deal, what are its contours going to be?
Well, number one, already there is an agreement for the withdrawal of the troops. Second is assurances by the Taliban is there. Third one is a ceasefire, and fourth one is the intra-Afghan dialogue. This was the agenda which was there, and two of the first agenda points already they had agreed, which President Trump called off on 7th of September. Once he called off, it was a pretext. Reason was that they thought that let elections be held in Afghanistan, which were held on 28th of September. But now even the United States had to come to the negotiating table because the results of the elections are quite murky. They have not given strength to President Ghani or anyone who will come up as victorious. Otherwise, it is already a lot of bad blood has been spilled on this issue. So therefore, it won't give any strength to the negotiators from the intra-Afghan dialogue part.
Okay.
And Taliban, for Taliban, the challenge would be that would they be able to sustain the dialogue?
Okay.
Because
That
there
is
are
important
many,
because they
there
have
are
the
many
temptation.
issues which are concerned with Taliban, and if you go back to their previous history, then I'm afraid there is very less to celebrate about, especially with regard to human rights, with regard to women's rights.
Right. That is important. Brigadier Saad Nazir, let me ask you, we are talking about the contours of a possible peace agreement. They say that the second part that ambassadors have pointed out, that Taliban is going to actually give assurances, right? Is the Taliban leadership in a position to give that kind of assurances? Because there is this thought that after Mullah Umar, it became a ragtag band of various, fighters, foot soldiers. So will they be able to ensure that an Afghanistan-wide peace or armistice can take place?
Yes, of course, if you see the Taliban history, it's not all that long, but whatsoever they have displayed on ground as well as with their word of mouth, they have stood by that. That is one thing. What they say, they do it.
Okay.
And
The Taliban.
The Taliban.
But the
Second thing
concern is operational.
The things are that one are the operational commanders,
Right.
and the other is the political leadership.
Right.
Mullah Umar was dead since 2 years, and the shadow leadership was there.
Yeah.
And he was obeyed because inside the Taliban people were knowing
But the
that he is a dead
culling
man.
continued.
He's dead.
But the culling continued, right? One by one, the leaders who were practically leaders were taken out.
Yes, of course, in such sort of moment, these things do happen.
Okay.
You knew how many General Mike Crystal, who came to Afghanistan with a search strategy, and he was their strong man. And the strong man rather put in embarrassment the American forces. And that's why Obama has to again promise that we will be pulling out.
Right.
That is one aspect. But as far as your question is concerned regarding the Taliban, that what can they deliver? So 3-4 examples are there. One was that brief peace for 3 days during the Eid holidays.
Right.
And there they displayed that
They
are the same
can
Afghans.
stop. Yeah.
And more so, the people are obeying them, whosoever are on their side, and more so, there is a respect for them in the Afghan society as well as their security forces.
Right.
Second thing is that recently they had a joint operations with the Americans and with the Afghans against the Daesh in Nangarhar. Right. And jointly they've eliminated or rather badly bruised the Daesh. That is another example.
Daesh is another very important spoiler, and let me ask Dr. Sahiba, because it is important in many aspects. On one side, we have seen that ragtag, splinters of TTP actually regrouped and formed Daesh of Afghanistan or Khorasan. On the other side, they seem to be actually they keep on attacking, right? Zalmay Khalilzad recently said that they have taken care of this problem. But do you think that they are no more a spoiler in the region?
Obviously, they are a spoiler. That's why Taliban are fighting against them. And now, I think that that is a power struggle within Afghanistan and within Taliban. And when Daesh emerged as a separate entity and they started asserting, it was challenging for Taliban as well, not only for the peace of Afghanistan. Another spoiler we are ignoring is Russia itself, I think, because still the source of funding for Taliban is other than the narcotics money, that is Russia. Russians are...
We had reports that they were actually armed by Iran and not by Russia, right?
But
I don't know, we cannot confirm them, but these were the reports that were carried in the papers.
Well, obviously, I have met with one of the Russian official, and he was very powerful person in Moscow, and he revealed that unless there would be a solution that would be acceptable for Russia, Russia is not going to retreat.
Can you
So,
identify what exactly will be that solution?
I think that solution is that Americans should be eliminated from Afghanistan till the last person.
Okay,
I think that
they should be removed, not
they should be.
eliminated. Okay.
Yeah, I think that that would be a Russian interest, obviously, and Russia is in a better position to assert its solution rather than Americans right now. So that is a strong spoiler, and
But Russia, if it is backing Afghan Taliban, whosoever is actually supporting Afghan Taliban, if the peace process goes on, they can't be spoilers, can they? They are actually party, they are aligned with one party, right?
they are seeking some regional solution.
Okay.
But Americans are not with the regional solution. They have just joined this process. You know, before that, Americans were not part of that regional process which was going on in 4 capitals of this region. That's why I can identify them as the spoiler.
Yeah. Ambassador Saab, you want to add to this?
Well, I think there is a regional approach to Afghanistan. So already meetings have taken place between China, America, Russia, and Pakistan.
Yeah.
There were 2 meetings, one in Moscow, other in Beijing.
Right.
So regional approach is necessary because the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan, Taliban are in touch with them. They have. So in that respect, United States has also realized that they cannot, promote their agenda unilaterally.
All right.
And Afghanistan is affecting all the immediate neighbors, more so Pakistan. So in that respect, it's not the spoilers. Spoilers are those who actually want their proxies and to promote their agenda. For Iran, the reason is there is a tiff between Iran and the United States.
Yeah.
But India's spoiler role is glaring in the sense that they are not a direct neighbor.
Okay.
But at the same time, they have built their stakes in Afghanistan through those anti-Pakistan elements with which they can promote some, they can play the mischief in Balochistan, and they have also been financing TTP, not directly, but through the Afghan sources, through the tribal,
So when the TTP splinters joined Daesh, do you think that India then is behind ISK?
Indirectly, why not?
Okay.
Yes, because it's, I will not be surprised, because in order to keep Daesh busy inside Afghanistan, rather than Daesh looking in India, so it would suit them. So yes, in that respect, it has. There are instances in Syria where Americans have had their contacts with the Daesh. And then Russians have been openly. Their Foreign Office last year said that those Daesh people, they were paratrooped in Afghanistan. It's not something hearsay. It's the Foreign Ministry's spokesperson. Clearly is saying that. So in this respect, Americans, they wanted to have a certain basis. But that would be a sticking point between Taliban and the Americans. Because then their rationale for keeping the bases would no more be there.
But we heard that when there was this conclusion of agreement, at least at the operational level between Zalmay Khalilzad and Taliban leadership, at that time, that also was mentioned in the agreement, the bases, which will stay open.
But Americans will have to pay. And they have to come round to an understanding with the Taliban. Right now, Americans are spending close to $8 to $9 billion for keeping the Afghan armed forces.
I'm grateful that you keep on highlighting the issues that I have to next come to, and that is finances, which is very important. But before that, I think Brigadier Saab wants to add to the Daesh aspect, right?
Yes, of course, once we are talking of the spoilers. Spoilers, of course, which has been identified by over the panel. But at the same time, I say that every deep state whether in the neighborhood or international area, all are the spoilers.
Every country has a deep state?
All are the spoilers.
Every
Yes,
country has a deep
everybody,
state?
Everybody.
Including us?
Including us, yes. So that is,
that
is international
I
phenomena.
find it
and
difficult to buy.
Rather you may be in the first 10.
No, but my thing is everything is so open in
They are
Pakistan.
so open, yes, of course.
So there is no deep state.
No, you are immediately affected by the peace and war in Afghanistan. So naturally, you ought to be a big stakeholder, and you are
Right.
in that. So naturally,
But the question is ISK India's proxy? If it is India's proxy, why is it that the US cannot see it?
No, of course, it was the creation of Western powers, and main god was America itself. 48 countries, 16,000 people. Within 4 to 5 months, they are coming into Syria, and then there is a proper leadership coming from the Green Copper camp, and then they are taking a big swath of land in Syria as well as in Iraq. And then they are selling oils to the people, and
Right.
they've got a caliphate, and then,
Yeah, but
the Khorasan chapter is opened here, and then no less than, I mean, like Karzai says, well, we have got strong evidence
Okay.
that they have been supported by the helicopters.
Okay.
And who has got the skies in Afghanistan?
Okay.
Who is controlling those
So-
skies?
No, but
Second thing
ISK
is
hang
their
on.
parliament
ISK
also.
keeps on attacking. ISK somehow doesn't attack Indians, right? Whosoever are sitting in Kabul, right? They keep on attacking various groups, including Pakistanis
Yes.
and including the US as well. So whether the Americans have the skies or not is not the question. We have to look at what India is doing and how the Western, intelligence services might have developed a blind spot regarding it, right? They might have.
Yes, of course. You know, once they used that mother of all bombs.
Yeah.
So it was used in Nangarhar.
Yeah. Against Daesh. Yeah.
Against Daesh. But that message was not only for Daesh, because such type of weapons are not used against the
We somehow heard the report that there were 14 Indian experts who also were killed during that attack.
Yeah, in there.
Yeah.
So once we say that, well, this will matter and how will it matter, I suppose the whole ground, whosoever is existing there, that may be the Kabul government,
Right.
that may be the warlords, or that may be the Americans, or that may be the neighbors, or that may be even the Talibans, all are enemy to the Daesh.
Right.
And
Dr. Sama-
that will be a very, very difficult situation for Daesh to exist
Right.
once this settlement takes place.
Right. Dr. Saba, they keep on presenting the Afghanistan situation primarily as a security situation. But it seems that there is another very important aspect, that is financial aspect. The Afghan government doesn't seem to have its own resources to come up with all the revenue they need. So they have to depend on foreign aid, right? And the US was working. When we say that a regional solution has to be sought, at that time that means that the US will stop financing Afghan war, especially when it withdraws its soldiers. So who's going to actually fill that gap? $100 billion per year.
That is a big question. I think that that would be the reason that Americans would not be totally disengaged. And there would be some international settlement for financing Afghanistan during the interim period unless they develop their own sources. I think that Afghanistan is having potential to take care of itself, but that normalcy would take some time.
Yeah,
And during
decades
that period,
perhaps.
obviously, at least one
So
decade.
what happens day after tomorrow? If a deal is signed tomorrow, what happens day after tomorrow?
That is a matter of concern for the whole international community, and especially those 15 countries who are involved in peace process and 12 interested and supporting
Right, Heart of
countries.
Asia and
Heart
rest
of
of
Asia,
Asia, yeah.
exactly. And they have to take care of that, and there should be some negotiation after the settlement that what would be the...
You understand that there are only few countries which have that kind of deep pockets. One is China, one is India. So is there a possibility they might be able to combine their forces, financial
You know about
resources and come
No, no,
together.
I don't
That
think. I think
library
that.
was
I think
That
that-
library, Donald Trump actually took India to
think-
task on that.
There are other countries like you see Qatar, you see Turkey. They are having their stakes and they are motivated to
No,
conduct
they are
those kind of
rich,
processes.
but they are not this rich. China and India have a lot of foreign currency.
China and India would certainly finance, and they are already doing the financing development process
Like
there.
libraries.
Like libraries, like the number of other things which are not being pointed out, like their development projects are their hospitals are run
Yeah,
by
Indira Gandhi
Indians.
Memorial Hospital.
Exactly, and
Salam
they are on very strategic locations. They are having influence on the people who are war-wracked coming
Yeah,
there.
but actually, when the entire world is bailing out Afghanistan, throwing in a few peanuts and building a parliament, a building is easier. When you have to actually foot the bill for the entire country, that becomes a problem.
That
You have
India-
to realize Americans have been doing it for quite some time.
And in that case, when the forces would be withdrawn, I think India would not be interested to finance all that.
Okay.
Because their interests would be minimized, as we discussed.
Right,
earlier.
Ambassador Saab is shooting these smiles. So I have to ask you.
With regard to India, I think they are quite calculated people.
Right.
They look at, they'll see which side of their bread is buttered. So only then I think they will come up with some finances.
Okay.
And but overall, I think there is a consensus that Afghanistan needs help, assistance at least for another decade.
Okay.
Apart from Heart of Asia conference,
Right.
United States itself has said many times that when an agreement is reached, so they are not going to leave Afghanistan alone, because they have got the experience of the past,
Okay.
and which in fact was in fact caused 9/11 according to their own reckoning.
Right. But sir, are you factoring in Donald Trump's economic nationalism, where he says that we don't need to spend money?
No, but even then they'll be well off, because right now per annum they are spending $50 billion in Afghanistan.
Right.
And if they say spend $5 billion per annum, they would still be better off than what the situation is right now.
And
Plus, bringing back the boys, as he called them, so that would be a big plus, and it would add to his election campaign.
right.
If he survives his impeachment, but of course.
He will.
Oh yes, he will.
it's-
But in a sense that it may not, may not be a fly in the bomb. So it's better.
Yeah, but the Senate is there and they are going to break the fall.
Yes, I know. But in a sense that it can, create bad taste, which can impact the campaign. But at the same time, his big plus would be bringing the soldiers back
All right.
to the country.
The
which
boys
he has
are
promised.
brought back home, and then 5 billion per annum is a sustainable amount from
It's
the
just
US
not
side.
the United States. So there will be the European Union. There will be other countries, especially Heart of Asia includes all the almost major countries.
But in the past, we have seen that they, if you remember from day one after 9/11, when Taliban were actually lost power, after that, whichever meeting took place, there were pledges, but it was primarily US who kept.
The reason was that that's precisely the reason that United States did not allow others to act freely.
Yeah. But Bonn Conference was primarily about financing it, right? And
Bonn,
the
which
US was
Bonn
actually-
conference?
The
US.
first one after.
No, well, that was political, more political than pledges.
Okay.
Then they had, joint monitoring board, which had UN, all European countries, neighbors of Afghanistan. So that's why that we had our pledges beginning from $300 million, and now it has reached $1 billion. India started off with the $1 billion, now it has reached $3 billion. So over the years, there have been, this pledge has been sustained,
Right.
and development work has been carried out. Of course, for the United States, the SIGA report, the Special Inspector General report on Afghanistan, they have spent almost $180 billion. but you can't see that $180
Where it
billion
has gone.
worth of development.
Yeah.
No, almost 80% has gone back to the United States, to
Right.
their contractors.
Right.
Yes.
But there's this idea also that outside Kabul, all the warlords who actually kept on filching that money are now billionaires and they are waiting for their turn.
It depends that what kind of a contracts were
Yeah.
allocated.
Cigar has been pointing it out, especially
is.
the hotel attached to the US Embassy. That still is a kandar, right?
Yes. No, they have built the embassy.
Yeah.
It's a massive embassy building. Almost spent $1 billion on that.
Yeah, but the hotel next to it and the cigar row report on that is damning.
Yes, it is. But the question is they had to cater because this hotel was exclusively for the Americans.
Right.
It is not open to others.
Okay.
So in that respect, then it is like any government-owned enterprise, which you normally in Pakistan we have seen how the government-run, PTDC hotels have been doing.
Yeah, but losing 15, 20% or 30% of the cash is one thing. Losing 98.8% is quite a big deal, right? But regarding the economy again, sir, Said Nazir sir, because you understand Afghanistan so well, let me ask you, does the Afghan economy have the power to sustain itself within 1, 2, 3 years?
Yes, of course, we are seeing the Afghan economy in a different perspective.
Right.
Rather like a nation state which is built up and which is properly functioning and where there is probably less of, you can say, problems or economic woes. It is not so.
But they have a security force, right?
Yeah.
And
that what
they
is
have
the
to
main-
finance it, right?
That what is the because America has spent so far about more than 80 billions only on the training and equipping of the Afghan army.
80 billion
80
only.
billion only on
Why-
this, only on the security.
Why this only at the end? Okay,
This only-
okay.
that
There
is
was a
for-
comment
is-
that I missed.
That is for the security only. So if they have spent that money, they will be required about 4 billion to sustain those forces. But the thing will, the priority will change once the Americans withdraw.
Right.
Because the American will be withdrawing only their forces. Their intelligence network will be there.
Okay.
It will be intact.
Right.
More so, their contracts with all contractor will also be there, which is counted about 20,000 or so.
Okay.
So the American,
Are you talking about the existing contractors or Eric Prince kind of a
he
contractor?
is asking just for about 20 billion. He said, "Oh, you."
He wants to be the viceroy
Yeah.
in Afghanistan,
Yeah,
US viceroy.
Of course, but he was not given that. Now he is out from that. Anyhow,
He is sitting in the UAE
yeah,
and keeps on pushing.
Yes, but he has not been given the contract now.
Okay.
For
You never know with these people, right?
yes, of course, that is true. Deep state against free.
No, this kind of loose bodies, they manage to, filch money.
So once this security problem will be over and the peace prevail, I suppose Afghanistan will not be maintaining that much security apparatus.
Right.
Because the Taliban knows how to live from the ground
Right.
and how to maintain the security. So
I'm-
that is very cost effective rather than cost prohibitive, which is now.
Right.
That is one thing.
That
So
is- that is important.
Second thing, whether this security apparatus will be folded or it will be
Merged with Taliban?
Merged with, what will be
Can
the
that
name?
happen?
Yes,
It never
can.
happened
They
in
are
Afghanistan.
Afghans. Oh, that what is the beauty in Afghanistan? That everybody that may be calling shots or that may be firing at each other,
You're
but at
telling
the
me,
same time,
you are
that the-
telling me that the Taliban,
Yeah.
that force is going to disband its name and become a part of US, the Afghan security forces?
yes, of course, the security will be the
Never
first
happens.
aspect. Security will be the first aspect which will be taken by the Taliban.
Okay, you're very
If that is-
optimistic.
no, if that is not, what was the bone of contention between once Taliban was having the government? Only the security was the bone of contention.
No, but
because they were
Taliban
disarming-
never integrated other groups. For example, they had some incursion in the Northern Alliance, right? But those groups that broke away, they were never integrated into ranks of
Their
Taliban.
strategy was that nobody else is supposed to be having a militia or some sort of weapons, which they, because we are responsible for the security of the whole country as well as inside. And mind it that 96 to 2000, it was the most peaceful country beside the war which was taking place. And second thing was narco was almost at 0%.
No, it is true, but so
yeah,
what?
And America
Narco
spent
might be
more
on
than
0%.
8 billions as a counter narco
So
operations.
with due respect, narcos might be 0%, but so was human rights, right? We know that there were humongous problems at that time. Let me go to Dr. Amna Mahmood and ask her, ma'am, when President Ashraf Ghani actually took power, everybody knew that he's Mr. Clean and he is not corrupt, right? And the idea was he spoke a lot about accountability, bringing all these people under the rubric of accountability. That didn't happen, especially the warlords. Every person can blame any other actor regarding law and order situation. But when it comes to accountability mechanism, who failed him?
Actually, for accountability, he should have writ all over the Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And we have seen that that was not extended more than 55% areas.
Yeah, but I'm talking about within that 55% areas.
I think that he is not having any writ within Afghanistan, as well as Brigadier Sir was pointed out that Afghan forces, they are trained by the US, but there were number of incidents when they cooperated with Taliban in looting against and attacks were done by Afghan armies who were trained by the Americans on American forces and NATO forces. And the level of corruption is very high in Afghanistan. I don't think that any president is able to overcome that. Secondly, we are talking about Taliban. What Brigadier Saab mentioned and what I understood, that Taliban, once they would be in government, that Afghan forces would be Taliban forces, in fact, and they would be subordinated, a part of it. Because Taliban is...
Sorry, Taliban forces will be Afghan forces, or Afghan forces will be Taliban forces?
Taliban forces would be Afghan forces, actually. That would be the identity of that government and forces.
Did it happen in the past?
It happened. It happened in the past. You
They were
have
called
seen that.
Taliban even then.
We are talking about the period he referred, 96 to 2000.
Yeah.
That was actually Taliban forces. There was no absolutely Afghan army at that time.
Okay.
Afghan army is purely a case of NATO. They have raised and they have trained them.
Yeah.
And still they are not confident that if they would leave them alone to defend Afghanistan, they would be able to do that. So I think that they are not able to resist Taliban anymore. And we are talking about lot of solutions, but still you see the Heart of Asia conference, what they insisted that bring Taliban on negotiation table, and so and so. It means that still Taliban are doing everything on their terms.
Okay.
And you cannot expect that they would
Yeah, but
follow.
that is more now an intellectual point rather than the human one, because so many people have died that now everybody is worried about bringing peace to Afghanistan.
That is one point. I think that
Yeah.
everyone is worried
But,
about that, but that is not actually the concluding point of these talks.
Yeah.
Afghans are having their special kind of their traits,
Right.
and they are not going to surrender
Yeah.
to the level we expect.
No, that is true. But Brigadier Saab, Ambassador Saab has very interesting aspect. Those areas that are controlled by the Kabul government, there the demography is quite interesting. When you look at people who are 14 or under, they are 1/3 of the population at least, perhaps more than that. The people who were born after 9/11, right? That means that some measure of governance was there. It is not the case with the rest of Afghanistan where war has been going on. The accountability issue is quite important because it is thought that there are billionaire robber barons sitting next to Kabul and they are not held accountable. There are people who are within Kabul, like Karzai, his brother used to be a drug peddler. Even they are not held accountable. Who has failed Ashraf Ghani and Afghan government?
Well, it had to be because Ashraf Ghani was again paratrooped. Because Ashraf Ghani never ran a two-man office in his life.
Yeah, but he is very popular now in Afghanistan.
Well, let's see. So we have to
The results.
look at the results.
Election
we have
results
to look at
are-
the results. You
Well,
know,
he will be on his own.
governance is different, and especially when you talk about Afghanistan. It had never had a central authority in a manner to control the provinces.
Yeah.
So during monarchies as well, so it was in Kabul. So whosoever was in Kabul was notionally in control of whole of the country, even if he was not.
Yeah.
Since Zahir Shah's 4 decades was a peaceful period of Afghanistan's history, not before that and not after that. So we can say that overall Afghanistan, you have to pacify the tribes.
Right.
And although tribal structure has been damaged, at the same time, tribes are there,
Right.
their elders are there, so you have to reach out. So Taliban did that when in their first, stint in power. Now they say that they have learned the lessons of the past, hopefully. But at the same time, major concerns would be, like rightly pointed out by the two worthy panelists, regarding the Afghan armed forces.
Right.
What would be their fate? Because they have been trained.
Okay.
They may not be as professional as the Americans would have wanted them to be, but at the same time, they have some level of professionalism,
Right.
which Taliban lack. Taliban may be having the courage, and they may have the fighting
firepower
spirit,
as well,
the
yeah.
fighting spirit,
Yeah.
more than firepower, because firepower, Afghan forces have more firepower than the Taliban.
Okay.
But since it was a asymmetrical warfare,
Yeah.
so Taliban had the upper hand, or at least they could hold their influence and all that. More so, because of the inefficiency, incompetence, and nepotism during Karzai's time and during Ashwani's time.
Right.
So Taliban could gain more favor at the countryside.
Right.
And that was the reason that now even American recognize
Right.
that they directly control 50% and they contest 20% of the territory.
Right. And I have to, actually, that brings us to the last question of the show today. Right. And that is about the fate of Afghan elections and democracy once a deal is signed. Do you see elections in the coming years?
Well, I'm afraid that these elections have not brought about any stability,
Right.
or they are not likely to contribute to stability
Okay.
or peace in
Right.
Afghanistan.
Right. So your take on democracy, future of democracy, if Taliban is on board.
The way the turnout was there, it was dismal.
Okay.
And the way the results are being delayed, probably they are waiting for the deal.
But
Probably they are waiting for the deal.
But
So
Taliban-
no winner comes in.
will Taliban, if they're part of the system, will they allow elections in the future?
Well, this will be decided in the intra-Afghan Taliban talks.
Okay.
That what will be the
Future of Afghanistan political
of their constitution, and as well as of their future type of government.
Right. Dr. Amna, your take.
Yeah, I think that's why the forces are not being withdrawn, because they want to reach some of the solution that would be indigenous and
Yeah.
agreed upon, and there would be some constitution, and I agree
Not
with-
this constitution?
not this constitution, because that is
We
not
heard that
accepted.
Taliban have actually agreed to this.
About 80% of that.
80% of that, but that there would be some changes, obviously, and I agree with the Ambassador Saab that initially there would be turmoil and it would not be settled very amicably as hope.
As one hopes.
one
Right, on
hopes.
that note, sir, you have already answered. Let me thank you for your participation. Dr. Amna Mahmood, thank you very much for your time. Dr. Brigadier Retired Saad Nazir, sir, thank you very much for your time as well. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. Let me take a leaf out of Ambassador Saab's book, and let us be cautiously optimistic in coming days regarding Afghan peace solution. Let us hope that it is a process, not merely a deal, because when it is a process, it can contribute more to solutions than what is signed on the paper immediately. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.